Welcome to Podula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jim Esch.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing. This is Dave. In today's podcast, you'll hear from Jeffrey Alulis, a student of Thom's from the 1990s. He describes his transformative relationship with Thom and the impact of Thom's mentorship, which led Jeffrey to a creative, rewarding career in music, film, and writing. This interview lasted nearly 2 hours, and it was quite difficult to pare it down. I considered splitting it into 2 podcasts. However, in the end, the message works best when left intact. I'm sure that there are many of Thom's students, friends, and colleagues who will resonate with some of the stories told here. Without further ado, let's jump in. I hope you enjoy it. Do you remember meeting Thom?
So I don't remember the first time that I actually sat down with him or anything, but I started at Marple Newtown. I had friends who were upperclassmen, and so the word around school was obviously, oh, Thom Williams, take as many Thom Williams classes as you can, and oh, he's the coolest teacher. He won, favorite teacher every year in the yearbook and all that. The word was out, and then I was, of course, a little contrarian, so I'm just, oh, well, we'll see about this coolest teacher that everybody thinks is so cool. We'll see. And I don't remember exactly the first meeting, but I remember it was very quick, where I was like, oh, okay, there's something about this guy. I get it. He just sort of instantly puts you off your guard a little bit, where he just looks you in the eye. He addresses you so directly. And so I was very instantly just kind of taken and like, oh, okay. For people who, I've thought a lot about what can other teachers learn, or how can you be like Thom? And I don't know that it's possible exactly, unless you're in the exact right position and you have the exact right personality. But one of the things about him, when you puzzle over what made him so great, I think a lot of it is just that he treated students very much like an equal. You would sit down and 15 years old, 16 years old, you really don't know anything about the world, but that didn't matter. He just kind of talked to you like you were a grown-up, like you were an adult, and just listened patiently, took in what you said, gave it the same equal weight that he would if you were his age. And I think that when you're a kid, you're screaming for validation and respect. And I think that just the way he said, oh, okay, and listen to, he just had that gift of being able to patiently listen and take it in and give you that feeling that you were respected as an equal, which is, I think, that made all the difference. And that sort of instantly endears you to the guy.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him, and it's been 40 years for me. And I remember him coming down the hall and just seeing him there with the vest and hearing he was, very boisterous. He was laughing about something. Mm-hmm. I thought, I need to get in that teacher's class.
I remember him being the mellow guy. So he was just sort of he was this figure, kind of, in the hallways kind of. So that was, I didn't see him, laughing or making any noise or whatever. It was just definitely more like this mysterious character, I think.
So did you ever play music with him?
I did, actually. So, the greatest Thom story that I have, the legend of the Skull Farmers. So I guess it was in senior year, me and my friend Ryan and my friend Andrew, I guess it was the creative writing 2 or advanced writing, whatever you take when you're a senior. We had all been in several Thom Williams classes before, so he knew all of us. And we were just these reject punk rock kids sort of in the corner of the room. He comes in and he gives everybody their assignment for the year. I think it was, a poetry journal, whatever it was that everybody does in that class. He's like, okay, so this is what you're going to do. Everybody get started. And then he kind of comes around to the back of the room and he comes up to me, Ryan, and Andrew, and he goes, okay, you guys aren't doing this. He's like, we're going to come up with something else for you guys. And which was, again, another reason I think Thom was such a special teacher, is that he had a way of individualizing his class, to an extent. For certain people, he could pick up on your interests and the things that you liked and gear things toward that. So
your story is not unique. It goes back all the way. He would do that a lot. Yep.
It's amazing. So he came up and he's like, again, he knew us. So he was like, okay, you guys, let's think of something else. And he knew that we were all really, the three of us were really into music. Ryan to this day, an amazing guitar player. Andrew was a pretty good guitar player. We were all in bands. We were all recording songs. So eventually, I think it was his idea. He was like, you guys are going to form the Skull Farmers. And this was a private joke that existed from the year before from another class. I couldn't tell you the origin of it, but he had some private joke about the idea of a death metal band called the Skull Farmers, where it's a lot of farming imagery mixed with literally farming skulls. I don't really know where that came from, but he's like, in this class, that's what you'll do. You'll form this band. He had his classroom, and then in the back of his classroom, he had a smaller room for the chess team to practice. And then off to the side of that was his little private office. So he set us up in this private office with a 4-track recorder. This is before computers could record music. So he had a little 4-track recorder. Like Ryan brought in a guitar and a bass. Andrew brought in a sequencer, a little, again, for the younger people listening, it was a little analog thing with, buttons where you could program in electronic drum beats. We wrote 6 songs and we recorded them like over the course of the semester. So Thom kind of got things kicked off, and he and I collaborated on the first bit of lyrics. So the first song he called it Apocalypse Wow. I think the title ended up being Farm Rot because we wanted it to go along with all the farming theme. Here we go with the old heave-ho, bash my skull and stub my toe, stick a straw up your nose and start to blow, because your butt, it needs room to grow. Ignore the pain, drink acid rain, empty out your sock drawer, pour it down the drain, peel off your skin and empty out your brain. You're a skull farmer now, things will never be the same. So that was a collaboration between me and Thom. I all the better lines obviously were his. I know that sock drawer line, empty out your sock drawer, pour it down the drain, is a Thom Williams lyric, which, put that on a green tea can. But so he got us going, and then we did like a bunch of other songs. One was Sewing the Skulls of Love, which was about necrophilia. He came up with the idea of that any death metal band has to go through a medical journal or a medical dictionary, find the longest word you can, and then write a song about that disease. So we wrote a song called Megaduodenum, which is also known as toxic megacolon, which is when your colon explodes to like the size of a basketball or something. The lyrics were like, I don't want to eat that broccoli. It looks just a little too green. I don't want to be hooked up to a stomach pumping machine. Megaduodenum, toxic megacolon. So Andrew.
And he was really pushing your creativity, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, because again, like the way he individualized things, the way he sort of saw the spark inside everybody and kind of fanned that flame, whatever it was. Yeah. So if you were more into flowery imagery and more delicate language, like he could get on board with that. If you were a more aggressive type person, if like he no matter what it was, like he just saw that thing inside you and just encouraged. He's like, yeah, let that, like, see where it goes. So of course we just loved the silly, over the top, offensive, like ridiculous stuff. And so he's like, yeah, more of that, do more of that. So so we put together like 6 songs. The best part of it is that, like, we were in this back room, and you could plug the guitars into a preamp and then plug that into the 4-track and do it and put on headphones, and the rest of the world doesn't know what's going on in that little room because you can't really hear an electric guitar being played with a closed door. And the sequencer, again, you can plug that into the 4-track, listen to it headphones, nobody can hear the electronic drum beats, but the only thing you had to record was vocals. You couldn't do that quietly. And I just remember, on one side of the room, I'm screaming about, necrophilia. And on one side of the room is Thom's class, so he understands what's going on, just leaves us alone. But we weren't thinking that on the other side of the wall was Miss McHale's English class, who had no idea what we were doing. And so I'm in there screaming, my colon. And then she suddenly, like, the door just opens and it's like, what are you doing in here? What is going on? Sorry, it's how do you explain it in the moment? Like, it's this. We got this band. It's the Skull Farmers. And it's Megaduodenum. So
you should have left it in the recording.
Yeah, we just. Good point. What is going on here? I'll just never forget her face. It was just this beautiful thing.
It'd be like beautiful, a Quiet Riot kind of moment.
Exactly. Think about this project, and I'm sure you get stories with similar things of just the goofy assignments, the weird off the wall stuff that people did. I'm sure the accusation from, maybe more serious academics or whatever would be, well, of course you loved Thom Williams' class because you got to play, like you got to do these silly things. You got to write songs about, farming skulls. But in the end, I went on to sing for a band. Like Andrew went on to pursue music as well. Ryan now works for a music software company and regularly records music and produces music as part of his job. And so us sitting in that room, like writing songs about like these ridiculous subjects, that was as valid an educational experience as anything else I ever did in high school. It just directly tied itself to what we all ended up doing in our lives. And it's because he fanned that flame. It's because he encouraged us that way that, empowered us, I guess, a little bit too. And I'll never forget it. And one thing, the beautiful coda to this whole story is that years later, after Thom passed away, I got to put out my first book. And in the thank yous, the acknowledgments, I wanted to thank Thom Williams. So I said something, thank you to my friend, mentor, and fellow skull farmer, Thom Williams. And the book did well enough, it got translated into these other languages. And I believe it was the French translator called me up. I was like, yes, we're doing good. We got it, I think we got it all. He's like, just one question. He's like, what is a skull farmer? Like, how do I translate that? And I had to kind of give him a quick explanation of like, oh, it's this band, Thom Williams. So yeah, so he is still confounding people from beyond the grave. Yeah.
Did he ever know about your professional career?
He did. It was
Did
yeah, so basically we kept in touch a little bit after high school. Once I moved to Massachusetts for college and I moved to California for graduate school. And at that point, it's hard to keep in contact, but we were still sending messages on email and MySpace and things like that. And I'm really sad because, then MySpace sort of became unpopular and I
right,
think they deleted all those old messages, which breaks
right.
my heart a little. But at some point it had been a while, like I hadn't talked or written to him in a little while. And in that span of time, I had put out, my first documentary, and I had joined Dead Kennedys as the lead singer,
Mhm.
which is just this crazy twist my life took. And Thom had great musical taste, and I knew that he would understand how cool that was. So at some point, I just checked in with him. I'm like, hey, it's been a while and blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to catch you up. Guess what? Singing for Dead Kennedys. And he wrote something back along the lines of, like, I have been following your punk rock perambulations. And, this, so, in his classic flowery, beautiful Tom Williams way, sort of said, yeah, I'm aware. I'm proud of you, kind of, that he had
Yeah,
been paying attention from afar. And obviously that meant a lot to me, that he
of course.
at least got to know that, and see that. So.
Did he have a name for you?
I never, yeah, I don't think I had a nickname. I know a lot of
No?
people, he did that a lot, which, I'm trying to think back. I'm like, maybe just kind of called me by my last name. That's about it. But yeah, no, I wish I had. I'm like, oh, now I'm a little jealous. I didn't have a nickname, but yeah.
And did you
Mhm.
ever get into the journaling aspect that he was pushing? Because I don't remember doing it much at
Mhm.
all. I mean, I know I did in high school, but I write, but I never like, the way he was trying to get us to do it.
Yeah, not the way he got us to do it. I'm trying to remember how it worked. If there was, because I don't remember which classes when. It was just because there was creative writing and speech and creative writing too, I think. I'm trying to remember if I took classes beyond that, but yeah, obviously for part of it, we were doing the Skull Farmers, and then another thing when I first did creative writing. He knew I really wanted to be a filmmaker. He knew that I was like the video guy. We're talking 25 years ago, but at some point he was, he would go, okay, you and you and you. It was like, go out there with a camera and make a video poem or do something with video and just like make a little avant-garde film. And so we had our little hour of class time, and I went out with a couple upperclassmen and was like, okay, like what can we do? How do we make a video? And they were kind of, they were fun guys, but they were just kind of like excited to, oh, cool, we don't have to be in class so we can smoke or something. And I was like, no, like, like, let's go, come on, say something cool. And here, stand up on the car. Hey, silhouette yourself against the sun and do this. And, I just was super into it and like wanted to make, wanted to impress Thom. So we made a very quite terrible, pretentious video, but like, I was very proud of it, that I had put all these little pieces together. And then I took other pieces of it and I put that together and dubbed music over it. I put like a Nirvana song on it or something,
Mhm.
and was very proud of like what I created. And again, Thom was very supportive, and it sounds like play, but I ended up as a professional filmmaker for as part of my career, and
Right.
still make videos to this day. So yeah, so I don't remember specifically journaling, but I think again it's because there was just I do remember all these specific moments of Thom like seeing what I was excited about and just pushing me to go do that.
It's just like when I look back on the people in my life who really like meant more than just just people who would happen to be there. He's
Mhm.
definitely right near the top.
Yeah, I have the exact same thing. Like, if you take out immediate blood relative family, I mean,
Right.
absolutely one of, if not the top influence in my life, how I turned out, imprinted on my personality, like just the way he talks, the expressions he used, the way he looked at the world. the wisdom he offered, like all that like went into who I am as a human being, and let alone, again, the encouragement he provided to let me, move forward and engage in a creative career and find my path, in life. So
Right.
I couldn't imagine I can't tell you a bigger influence, for sure. I was thinking the other night about how I don't know if he ever documented sort of any sort of philosophy on how he teaches, or what, I feel like, he could have taught a master class to people about his philosophy towards teaching, because I feel like if you are a teacher and you're trying to learn from Thom Williams, it's difficult, because part of it is just the nature of what he taught. Like, he was teaching these creative subjects, so the rules were a little fuzzier. And if you're a math teacher, a science teacher, a history teacher, you're just trying to get 30 or 50 kids from point A to point B over a certain amount of weeks. Like, you're very much boxed in by what you have to accomplish. And the thing is, kids all learn different ways. Like, some people, are slower, faster, they like visual, they like oral, like whatever. He kind of had the freedom a little bit, but at the same time, there were certain things that he could do. Like, again, just, he met with each kid. Like, you would write a poem, you'd go up to his desk, and he would sit there, listen, and talk with you back and forth. I mean, I don't know that there's any reason why even a math teacher couldn't just, okay, today in class, I'm just going to meet with one of you. Okay, where are you having trouble? What do you understand? Just catching people up that way. And again, that idea of the patience and the respect that he showed. I mean, that's easier said than done. And I'm sure every teacher tries to do that, tries to respect their kids, but he just had this innate ability to sort of make you feel at ease, make you feel like to share wisdom without being like pedantic or like talking down to you, and removing those barriers while still maintaining a respectful classroom environment. Like, it was never anarchy and chaos. We didn't take advantage of it's like Prince's vault. Like, he dies, and then there's just like all these unfinished amazing albums that the world never got to hear.
Exactly.
But yeah, that I do really think that that would have been a really great gift to the world. Just be like, this is it's just some sort of philosophy. This is how you should talk to kids. But it's also like, that's not Thom Williams' way to tell you how to do something. You're just supposed to figure it out, and he could guide you. So that's of course why he would never would have done that. But I think it's a shame.
Not to deify him, because that's one thing I definitely don't want to do, but I think he kind of put us all out there. 35, however long years that he taught, that he imparted this to us, and here we are, like, talking about it now. And I mean, I'm a teacher, and I teach online, and I try to impart some of that to my students when I can. I teach a lot of general education classes, so I get a lot of people who don't want to be there.
Right.
And I try to I have to tell them, well, there's a reason why you're here, and let's figure it out.
Yeah. I do remember just another anecdote that, again, might help. I don't know if it helps at all, but I was talking with my friend Ryan. We were brainstorming Thom stories. So at one point, we were in an English class and we were reading Macbeth. I was always dodging the reading and stuff like that. So I've never, confession, I've never read Macbeth, which I feel bad about. Because it was just being presented, and it was fine and competently presented, but I wasn't interested. And then one day the teacher was sick. They couldn't get a sub. I don't know what happened, but Thom Williams ended up taking over for our English class for that one day. And he presented Macbeth. And, my friend Ryan and we have a vivid memory of Thom Williams teaching one day's worth of Macbeth. And just, he goes in and he looks and we were on the edge of our seats, like, so excited to hear about Macbeth and learn about Macbeth. And this sounds like the best play I've ever heard of in my life. And then we went back to our normal class. And again, we just were like, I have no memory of my, of learning Macbeth with my other teacher. She was a very sweet lady, but I just have no memory of learning. But that one day that Thom Williams came in, he just brought it with such passion, and he communicated it in such a way and was so excited about it that it was just absolutely contagious. And again, that's easier said than done for teachers to do that, but that was the power he had, I guess. quotes that I take with me from Thom are these weird individual moments that he just sort of tossed off like it was nothing, and then have stuck with me for my entire life.
Right.
Some of them being just silly. Like I remember talking to him about a band I was in or something, or a band I was forming, and having trouble with the lineup. And he said, "I've never met a drummer who didn't need severe psychological help." And if you are involved in music, you know exactly what he's talking about. And I swear 25 years later, that quote comes up all the time. Like I'll just be talking with bands. Oh, the drummer, you know, I'm like, my writing teacher used to say, never met a drummer. And people laugh every time. They're like, yeah, totally. Oh my God. I feel like I'm allowed to say that because I also play drums. So it applies to me as well. But that one I'm sure will serve me for the rest of my life. Another small one was some movie had come out, and I was, you know, telling him he should go see it. You should go see the movie. And he's like, I'll wait till it's on video. He's like, I don't go to the movies. The movies come to me. And I was like, why? Just go see it. It's going to be a year before it's on video and you can see it. And he said, well, I don't want to sit in a room with a bunch of yum-yums and like watch this and watch the movie when I could be comfortable in my own home. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but I will always remember the word yum-yums, like that was the term he used. 25 years later, I went to go see 1918 at the movie theater, a couple seats down, and these two people texting on their phones and talking at normal conversation level, just completely distracting from the movie, being horrible. And in that moment, Thom Williams, the spirit of Thom Williams, sat next to me. So look at these yum-yums in this theater. Like, why do you want to go to this room and sit with a bunch of yum-yums when you could have been watching this at home? Like, you were right, Thom. You're always right. Bunch of yum-yums. Like I feel like maybe he used it interchangeably, and he just always had these amazing misanthropic like glossary of terms like to describe, you know, like the world at large. And I just, you know, as a, you know, angry like punk rock kid, of course you're so excited to have like a new term by which to, you know, denigrate all of humanity. So I feel like there was a thing he did. It's not like necessarily a quote, but there was like a cadence to it. And I don't know if anyone else experienced this. So I could never possibly use the right words, but he would do a thing where I'd go up and hand him a poem or an assignment. And of course I was always trying to push boundaries and make something, you know, silly or offensive or edgy. He would always say something along the lines of, like, he would look at you very straight face, and it was all about the deadpan delivery. And he would say something along the lines of, you know, well, I can see that you've brought about the apocalypse with what you've done, and I, for one, look forward to riding a horse with you into the new tomorrow that you've created. Like, he wouldn't say, like, not that, but you know that cadence, like, where he would, like, I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but he would just sort of improvise this beautiful, like, prosaic vision of the apocalypse that you had just brought about with your poem, which was always, like, and it just made me laugh. It was always entertaining. It was always a beautiful, perfect response. And there was another one where I don't remember if it was a class assignment or if it was just us bullshitting and talking, but I was going on about, you know, my bucket list or where you want to go with your life or things you want to accomplish. And I was saying, oh, you know, I want to, like, someday I'm going to move to Paris and, you know, just like the Lost Generation or Jim Morrison. I'm going to, like, I'm a little pretentious, you know, suburban poetry kid. So of course that's what I wanted to do. Right. I'm going to, you know, write avant-garde films and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Paris. He's like, don't go to Paris. He's like, everybody goes to Paris. Go to Copenhagen. And like, in that moment, it was like this amazing aha moment of like, he's so right. Yeah. He's like, everybody goes to Paris. Like, fuck Paris, go to Copenhagen. Like, I didn't know anything about Copenhagen. I was like, yeah, why not? And of course the lesson is obvious. Like, don't do what everybody else did. Make your own way, forge your own path. Right. Take the risky, you know, left turn and go with it and explore new territory. You know, push yourself. Don't, like, if you have a creative idea, there's an even more creative idea right behind it. Like, go dig for that. Don't just stop at the first thing that you thought of. Like, take the road less traveled by. So it's solid advice that people get in their life in different forms. But to me, it's always been, don't go to Paris, go to Copenhagen, like take the Thom Williams lesson is what made that sink in. Yeah. And in life too, I've tried to always adhere to that. Like, okay, don't do that. Like, go to Copenhagen. Like, what's the next, what's the more creative idea? What's the riskier path? What's the bolder move? Like, go to Copenhagen. The grand irony of it is that as a result of Thom's advice, Thom's life guidance, I ended up, moving to California and having a very, a non-traditional career. And as a result of that, I ended up getting to travel a lot and travel with a lot of bands and seeing parts of the world that I wouldn't have seen if I had taken maybe a more traditional career path. I've been to literally all 7 continents at this point, most of them more than once. I think all of them 2 or 3 times, except for Antarctica. Some of that's vacation, but a lot of it was on doing documentary work and other things, so I've been to like 70 countries at this point. But at one point I was traveling with a band and we were doing this European tour and we were going to go to Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. And I had just not been there yet. This was, only 5-6 years ago. I was so excited to actually go to Copenhagen. And then like that, I didn't tell anyone else that we were traveling with, like what the concept of Copenhagen meant. Like obviously Thom didn't mean literally go to Copenhagen. It was this metaphor, but like the whole day, went sightseeing during the day and just saw the town. And the whole time in my head, it was my little, private toast to Thom Williams of like, I made it, and here I am, told me to go to Copenhagen. And the irony of it being, by metaphorically always trying to go to Copenhagen, I literally got to go to Copenhagen, like as a result of it. So I, always have to thank Thom Williams for experiences like that.
That's something.
And there was this other quote that literally changed my life is, it was not something he said to me, it was something he said to my parents. And it's hard to tell the story without sounding self-aggrandizing, so I apologize at the top, but I think for what you're trying to do, I think it's important to tell the story in the way that a person can change your life with just a few words. But basically, if you grow up in suburban Philadelphia, the reason your parents moved there is because it's a very practical place to live. It's safe, it's quiet, homes are affordable, you can send your kids to a decent school. You didn't move there because you wanted to start an experimental nude dance troupe or something. Like, right. You moved there for very practical reasons.
American dream.
Right. Yeah. And nothing wrong with that, not putting that down. I'm just saying that that's the culture that you're in, is a practical one. A lot of parents and teachers pay lip service to the idea of, follow your dreams and you can do anything. And it's a great big world out there. Well, it's just then when you say, what I'd love to do, become a filmmaker. Well, follow your dreams, but maybe do you have a backup plan though? Like that's kind of the follow-up, the subtitle to that. So, and my parents were no different, and I don't want to insult my parents because they were very supportive. If when I took music lessons, they made sure I could take music lessons. When I was in the school play, like they were at the performance, great job. Like they were very super supportive. I had these horrible, noisy punk rock bands that just made horrible, cacophonous noise. And they, hey, can we practice at the house? Okay. And they just sat upstairs, plugged their ears, and dealt with it. Like that's, so again, I wasn't raised by the dad from Footloose telling me that, art is terrible or something. At the same time, when it comes down to, well, I think I really would like to pursue this, creative career path, writing, filmmaking, whatever, it just caused a lot of friction. It just, it caused a lot of, issues. Because I think parents think to themselves, when you live in suburban Philadelphia, you associate a career in the arts with poverty and struggle, and nobody wants that for their kid. You want your kid to be comfortable and okay. Anyway, so that's just sort of the attitude going into it. And there was a parent-teacher night. My parents go to meet this Thom Williams that they've heard so much about. Obviously, they could tell that he was this big influence, and I had told them stories and whatnot. And I guess they go in, and the teachers give a little presentation, and afterwards, they go up and introduce themselves and get to meet him personally. Oh, hi, we're Jeff's parents. Now, they've been to all these parent-teacher nights, and it's got a predictable flow where oh, Jeff's a pleasure to have in class. Oh, he's a funny guy. Oh, he's delightful, creative, whatever. And so they're expecting that. Mm-hmm. And Thom Williams looks at them, eye to eye, like dead in the eye, the way he does, and with that deep, very serious baritone, he looks my mom in the eye and he goes, your son is dripping with talent. And like, she was like knocked back. Like, she still tells the story to this day about like how she's like, it just like, I couldn't believe it. Like, and it's the evocative language that he used. Like, a lot of people had said, oh, he's a very talented kid. It's like, your son is like the word choice, dripping with talents. This like I don't know, it just brings something out of you. And then and also obviously the delivery, like that Thom Williams delivery, where he could just look at you, like he was very much saying with his whole mannerism, everything, like, take this seriously. You have to. This is an important message that I'm delivering. And the tone of voice, obviously, just this low, like, whoa, what? It's like he had that hypnotic way about him. And it blew their minds. And like, and after that, I'm not saying that right after that, they became these hippies who were like, yes, go be free, find RG, find your path. But the foot came off the brake a little bit. Like, they unclenched a little bit, because obviously they're my parents, they cared about me, they were very supportive, loved me. So they always, thought of me as a talented kid or whatever, but it was
they
like that
validation now.
Yeah, exactly. That validation meant everything. And they were like, oh, maybe we should kind of like see how this goes. And so basically, I ended up in college. I was an English major. And I was a double major in sociology. So I was graduating college 4 years later, and I was trying to choose my path in life. And I was either going to go to law school and be an environmental lawyer and kind of like fight the good fight, or I was going to go to film school and I was going to move to California and try to make it as a writer and a filmmaker. And it's a tough decision. And of course, I wanted to go to Copenhagen, take the more risky path. That caused, again, a lot of friction. And there was a lot of back and forth with my parents about it. And really, honestly, my mom said one of the big decision points for her, she's like, I just think back to that time when I met Thom Williams, and he said, your son is dripping with talent. She's like, I have to go with him. He had all that faith in you. I can't, ignore that. I guess, okay, let's see where you go, and I think, and then over the course of the following years, it's a creative career is full of struggle and uncertain times. It's a roller coaster. And I think that always gave her a certain amount of comfort to, revisit like that moment. Like, well, Thom Williams said he'd be okay. Like, Thom Williams gave this. So I always it's crazy to point to that moment as an example of like one sentence from this guy, like just a few words, one sentence uttered by the right person at the right time can just completely change the trajectory of a person's life. I'll owe Thom forever for that. And again, as a result of taking the road less traveled, as a result of like taking that kind of risk, everything cool in my life has happened. I've gotten to, make, like, I would have been thrilled if I could have, as a teenager, if I could have told myself, someday you'll make it as either a filmmaker, a writer, or a musician. And I have been able to have a career in which I am have made money as all three. Right. And that's insane to me. To be able to say, someday you're going to join the Dead Kennedys as the lead singer. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And I wouldn't have done that if I had gone to law school. I wouldn't have gotten to travel the world, make films. In my contact list on my phone, I have people who are just this long list of my, musical heroes, people that were just existed on record albums, and now I text with them regularly. Wow. I got to become a New York Times best-selling author as a result of doing that. If I could have told myself in Thom, I actually sometimes envision it, like what it would be like to time travel back and talk to myself as a high school student. And when I have that little fantasy, I always imagine myself in Thom's classroom. For some reason, that's where that conversation takes place. Right. So yeah, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And again, I will owe him forever. And it pains me sometimes that I never got to properly thank him, in the more modern era like that.
I think he had to know, I think he had to know, because you were following what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you mentioned that you got to do these things and make money at them, but I think it's because it was not about making the money.
Right. It's the idea that I've just been able to follow it and manage to keep the train going in one way or the other.
Very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Have you
I'll owe him forever.
have you been able to impact somebody's life like that? Like somebody who's sort of more up and coming and
I don't know that I have. I was thinking about this. I was like feeling very bad about myself. Like, have I paid forward Thom's lessons? I mean, I've always shared his wisdom very freely with other people. Anything I learned in his class or any, these moments. So I've tried to be as encouraging as I can, but I don't know that I've been in a position where I've mentored someone or where one sentence from me changed the direction of anyone's
right.
life in particular. It's that's why he sort of, I think there's this sacred bond sometimes between teacher and student, and you're really, it's also that he's meeting us at this very vulnerable time in our lives where you're a teenager, you're figuring out who you are, you're figuring out where your life is going to go, so it's just I don't meet a lot of teenagers I can like talk to, but yeah, so he just happened to be in a very interesting position. But I'd be happy. It does make me think like maybe I should find some way to mentor people. Just I don't know if anybody wants my advice, but
My parents remember Thom very differently. Like
what did they say? What was
I
their
think they were a little
impression?
suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this guy with a beard and the long hair and very casual attitude. And
Right.
I don't remember my mother ever telling me about like she remembers him, but she doesn't anything more than So this guy's different from everybody else, kind of thing.
But I think like first of all, I think there was a cultural shift between the 80s and 90s where like a long-haired teacher wasn't as maybe controversial, and also again I was a kid who was like just always had some goofy, terrible looking haircut and was wearing whatever weird clothes to school, wore bathrobes to school one day and wearing old military gear or t-shirts from obscure bands. But like that was my Thom Williams looked like the consummate college professor compared to me.
Right.
So I think that they accepted that he was going to be a little different, a little bit non-traditional maybe. I don't tell that story often. I've never told it publicly, except for the because it's like, oh, like Thom thought I had talent or something, like look at this praise I got from him. But it's not about that. It's about how seriously he took the path of his students, and he knew like that you can't help or impede depending on where they're at. And I just think he saw that as something important to do.
Well, that's why he was a teacher.
Exactly. That's why he was good at what he did. That's why we all remember him. He really went out on a limb. Any other teacher, you can just glad hand the parents, shake hands, say something nice about the kid, and you move on with your day. And it's like he took up like this personal investment, I think, in each kid for sure.
Yeah, he did. That's for sure.
So yeah. Well, like little thing. Just because again, this is just a rare format to share Thom Williams memories. So this is not like anything particularly inspiring, but just like classic Thom. There was some sort of night. I guess they present awards or something like before graduation. There's some sort of awards night where everybody gets some sort of certificates or something. And we said something to Thom about oh, are you gonna hang out? We can talk after the ceremony or something like that. And he's like, no, I'm out of there as soon as I can get out. And he's like, watch my move. He's like, I got to move. He's like, I fake right, go left. And then I get out of there. And so if I wish someone could capture this on video, but basically he goes up, he presents the awards that he is obligated to present. And then when the next presenter comes up, he sort of does this move where he fakes right, like he's gonna sorry, and then like goes around the other side, and then he just disappears into the wings. And I was like, oh my god, he did it! It's like, and it was this because if he had just walked off, it would have looked strange, but because he did this little like stutter step, it like totally everybody else like doesn't notice that guy just completely walked off the stage and disappeared and left all the other teachers to deal with the remaining part of the night. So fake right, go left. I'll like always remember Thom Williams.
See, I didn't see it, but he did it to us when when Jim and I were in a band and we played at the senior variety show. He was supposed to play with us.
Okay.
We had rehearsed. He was going to be there, and he disappeared right before the performance, and so we were left to perform, and it went okay, but it was like I remember being just completely baffled. Like the lights are about to come on. Where the hell is he? He was gone.
It's great. Yeah, he not. I guess yeah. He just was. He was like, all right, just gonna go home. Why hang out with a bunch of yum yums? Maybe I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The other big collaboration I did with him was we called ourselves the Bastard Theater Company. So I was always in all the the high school plays, and so I don't know if they were doing this back then, but in our senior year, if you had been in the theater program for a while, when you were a senior, you could direct a one-act play, and at the end of the year, they had a one-act play festival, and 5 or 10 kids, whatever, got to present their one-act plays.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very cool experience, and at some point, Thom uncovered a script called The Skinhead Hamlet, and it was like this British skinhead version of Hamlet, and he just got this huge kick. I don't know if he had that like back then or if it was a more recent thing that he had recently discovered, but yeah, it was just all this like weird British skinhead slang of people yelling at each other and brawling and drinking beer and whatever, but trying to be Hamlet. So at the time, Thom also had many movie recommendations, and he had recently recommended a kung fu movie called Invincible Kung Fu Legs, which is classic. I recommend everyone check it out. But that became like a class favorite and an in-joke, Invincible Kung Fu Legs, in the class. And so at some point he started suggesting, he's like, we should write the Kung Fu Hamlet and just do Hamlet, but like as a Kung Fu movie. And I was like, yeah, I'm down. And so he and I collaborated on this script, wrote it together in class, outside of class a little bit, I think. And thankfully, he obviously had this amazing academic knowledge of Hamlet. So there was like layered jokes and all this. And my friend Ryan and my friend Jesse, they had a, recording studio equipment in their house. So we recorded all the lines, and the idea was the actors would have to lip sync to every line, like in a Kung Fu movie. And so we had Kung Fu fights and all this ridiculous stuff, and, like just all these battles and vaguely structured around Hamlet in this weird surrealistic goofball, like gonzo theater kind of way. And so when I was a senior, me and my friend Ryan, we co-directed the Kung Fu Hamlet, and everybody was like all excited to be part of our production because we were having fight rehearsals, and it was just obviously this silly comedic bit. So first of all, I'm just like, that's a treasured memory, being able to work on a play and then have it produced, alongside the great Thom Williams and collaborate with him on that level. But then what happened was, like, several years later, there was some fringe festival in Philly or one of those like artsy theater festivals, and someone's like, oh yeah, and there's this new play that's lighting up the fringe festival, Kung Fu Hamlet. And I'm like, what? And I was like, did they steal our thing? And they didn't steal our script. They had just come upon the same idea several years later and had done their own version of it. But they were like, you won't believe how funny it is. They record the lines and the actors have to lip sync. I'm like, that was our thing. We literally produced that like 5 years before. And so that kind of blew our minds, and we were all like grumbling about that. Like, they stole our bit. Like, that was our idea. We could be the hits of the Fringe Festival. We should have, we thought it was just we were having fun. Right. And then, but then the year after I graduated, we decided to collaborate again. And I, worked with Thom on another. We were like, what else can we bastardize? Like, that was our thing, the Bastard Theater Company, where we take a classic play and then bastardize it with pop culture. So another Thom Williams movie recommendation was Elvis, the Elvis movie Clam Bake. He's like, you got to check it out. He looks right into the, camera and says, clam bake, we're going to have a clam bake. So of course it's a ridiculous movie. And then we started watching all these Elvis movies and realizing that there is a formula to them in which Elvis, the rich playboy, comes to town, loses all his money, falls in love with a girl, gets in a fight with the girl's rich boyfriend, and then ultimately has to engage in some sort of race or contest at the end, at which he gets all the money back and wins the girl. So we were like, what can we match that with? And we were like, what about Oedipus, where Oedipus like comes to town and he meets his mom, and then like, he fight, like the Sphinx will be the evil character, and he'll kill his dad on the road to the, so we had this whole thing, and we wrote it. Me and Ryan and Jesse, I believe, were also part of the writing as well. And then they created even all these beautiful Elvis style songs, so that it was like a musical, and there was a water skiing scene, and it was like completely ridiculous. And one of Thom's other students, who was a year behind me, he produced it for his senior year for the one act play festival. And so again, now Kung Fu Hamlet, I'm like, all right, fair enough. Someone could have come up with that on their own. Maybe we're not these geniuses. But then like years after that, another Fringe Festival, another like play comes up, and it was like, oh yeah, there's a play, the Elvis Oedipus, and they took Elvis and they mixed it. I'm like, there's no, and again, it was their own take. They didn't take our script or anything. But I was like, we came up with this like 10 years ago. Like, who thought that they would, so that just always was, this interesting validation with Thom and I that like, okay, well, we didn't get the credit for it. We should have pursued this. We should have been more proactive about putting these plays out there. But I guess it just shows that like, we just felt at least a little satisfied inside that we had created these plays before anybody else thought of the idea, apparently.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some of my other favorite collaborations with Thom. And if anybody, and then some of the emails that we would exchange back and forth, even well into years later, we were always bouncing other ideas for Bastard Theater plays. We wanted to make it a trilogy, and sadly we never followed through. But now I'm thinking like, hey, I can. Apparently, I could be the star of a Fringe Festival if I just went and wrote one of these plays. Good. So we had the two ideas that I liked the best were the Motley Crucible. That's one of my favorites that never got made, and then the Planet of the Grapes of Wrath. So there's something in those. So if anybody wants, if there's any play producers out there that want them a guaranteed hit, like look me up. We'll make one of those. I love that book because I was and I still love that book. I remember getting it for summer reading or something, and it was like it's super thick, and then you open it, you're like, oh my god, this is gonna be so dense. I'm gonna be so bored, and then I like fell in love with that book against all odds. Yeah. So The Grapes of Wrath is still one of my favorites, just for like not only for being a good book, but then for throwing me off guard like that. And like, oh, I thought I was gonna be bored with this boring thick book, but here we are. So yeah, I had the concept. I was working with the theatrical concept of like, okay, what if the Jode family, goes into suspended animation looking for work on a farm, but they wake up and the planet has been taken over by grape men, like the Fruit of the Loom commercial, like guys with grape suits, and because no one was there to pick them for all that years while they were in suspended animation. Now the grapes rule the earth, and I was like, there's something there. I know we could work on this. And we just, fortunately, it never happened. One of the unfinished, it's a one act. I tell you, it's a one act hit play at the Fringe Festival. Someday I will do it. There was another one where, so this is again just more like another moment of Thom. This isn't really, I don't know if this is inspiring, but like it was kind of coming down to senior year, and I think like, when he kind of goes over it with this, or like at the end of the senior year, what would you do differently? What haven't you gotten to do? What if he kind of has that philosophical discussion about how have you spent these last, imagine if you had to go back to kindergarten right now, and then, what would you do differently and all that. I believe it was part of that discussion that I said, I always wanted to live out the Van Halen Hot for Teacher video where Eddie Van Halen walks up the library table and Waldo, the nerdy kid, is sitting at the edge, and Eddie Van Halen just kicks all the stuff off the desk and does a ripping guitar solo in the nerd's face. I was like, maybe I could do that. And so he's like, let's make it happen. And so we lined up all the desks in the classroom leading up to his desk, and he took anything particularly breakable off the desk, but left a couple things on there. And my friend Andrew put some glasses on and sat behind Thom's desk, like in this, like quivering like Waldo in the Hot for Teacher video. And I had an electric guitar. I can't play very well, so my friend Ryan was playing the actual Hot for Teacher riff, like on an acoustic. I just got to walk up the line of desks, got to Thom's desk, kicked everything off of it, just did this, to horrible ripping guitar solo right in Waldo's face. And then, it was just this ridiculous, goofy moment that no other teacher in their right mind would have let happen. But hey, Thom Williams, he likes to grant wishes, so he made me. I got to live out the Hot for Teacher video in his classroom. There was a couple of weird class assignments. I don't remember what class. I assume speech or something. But there was an assignment where he said, we needed to come up with a puppet show, but it had to be like a grown-up theme. Like it couldn't just be like for kids. I don't know if you ever had to do that or heard about these assignments.
A lot of this stuff that you're talking about is brand new. I just remember, it was 40 years ago, but I remember school was over, and that was it.
Right.
I don't remember any of that.
I mean, this is, I think, why, we all remember Tom's class so fondly because, I mean, high school is just misery. Like, it's just the worst thing ever. You're a teenager. You're like, your brain is still forming. You just want to, like run around in circles because of all the energy and hormones or whatever. And you're just sitting through these dry classes and stuff you're not interested in. And then like Tom's classroom was this oasis of like, okay, like I can be myself. We're going to do something fun or interesting or new. I know that much. And again, there's, this guy respects me. We can talk like on a normal level. You could just be yourself in that room. And it was just this one little, spot, like this one safe space that, from the drudgery and misery of going through a high school career.
Right.
But so the example is, so one day he's like, okay, so everybody has to come up with like adult themed puppet shows. And I only remember that me and this exists on video somewhere. I don't know if I still have it, but me and my friend Ryan, always collaborating, we decided ours would be about bulimia. And so we made sock puppets, but we put like a little clear tube like inside the sock and then had water balloons attached to them so that we had like supermodels talking to each other and then going to the bathroom and throwing up. And we were just like spraying water all over the floor and just, making it this disgusting thing where they're puking all over each other. And the class was rightfully horrified and we made a huge mess, very Gallagher style. And then, but I do think we were outclassed. There was one other group that did, that episode of Geraldo where there's like it's like a classic episode of Geraldo where there's like these neo-Nazis on there and one of them throws a chair and breaks Geraldo's nose. It was like this.
I think I've seen it, yeah.
This is a video clip from the 80s that still goes around. It's on YouTube. Geraldo gets his nose broken by skinheads or something and neo-Nazis. So this other group in class reenacted the Geraldo nose-breaking scene with sock puppets. So I have to give it to them. They might have beaten our vomiting puppets, but either way, that's a good day when you have vomiting puppets and like this
right.
just ridiculousness going on. So that was beautiful. Another one I remember Ryan and I did a thing of a presentation on what not to put in your hair. And so Ryan had like very long, hair. And we put, like a garbage bag and some towels around him, like a barber chair. And I gave this whole presentation where I'm like, what you really don't want to put in your hair is whatever, Worcestershire sauce or, peanut butter and mayonnaise. And I literally chewed gum and like put it in his hair in the middle of class. And the big finale was smashing an egg on his head, just letting that drip down. And the whole class just grossed out and disgusted by that. So he had to then sort of took the garbage bag and swept it over his head and sort of made this turban out of the garbage bag to hold in the mess, and then sort of went home in the middle of the day to go rinse all his hair out and try to get rid of it. He was just telling me the other day, he's like, yeah, and then I came back at the end of the day to go to play practice and my hair just still stunk and was horrible. Like it took days to like get all that stuff out. But I do think that the presentation was effective because I was trying to explain that you should not put these things in your hair. Right. So I think my point stands over the years.
And you got to do it in class, so.
But yes, I mean, and again, I don't know, obviously this is silly, it's over the top, but first of all, just that Thom let you go to that extent of like making a complete mess and whatever, and had no problem with it. It's not, see me after class, you're not supposed to smash eggs in my classroom. There was nothing that was so improper. Because because really what's the harm? Like, okay, so, it's a little bit of a mess, you'll clean it up. And, I don't know that I could draw as grand a conclusion about how like smashing an egg on my friend's head allowed us to live a creative life. But the point, I believe this was for a speech class where it's just about presentations and talking in front of people and, all that made sense. So yeah, I think that again, so you could see why this is the class that you wanted to be in during the day. Like you just counted the hours until, okay, when can I go to Thom's class and do that instead of everything else? So yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, like other than that, I just remember lots of in-depth discussions. He would just bring up a topic and just let the class kind of go at it. Like, is it right to eat animals, or what is art, or should you spank your kids? And just let us all like have a debate and bring it up. And he would just moderate and not try to weigh in. Like he would just, if you weren't thinking of something, he would come up with the counter argument and like, okay, and then let everybody else feed on that for a while. So I don't know if you ever had like moments like that where I don't know if that was a normal thing, but
One
that
on
was
one,
definitely.
I did,
Hmm.
because I used to play chess with him also. And so
Right.
while he was kicking my ass, he would have conversations, probably just to amuse himself, because
Right.
my chess playing wasn't amusing him for sure.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I was like a dilettante on the chess team. Like I loved hanging out with Tom. I loved having an excuse to do that, but I never was a like trained or reading the books or being able to
yeah.
enact strategy. I think I was in one or two tournaments where I was handily defeated very quickly. But
Did he ever play with like 30 people in the room? Were you ever one
with,
of those?
with
Where,
chess, you mean, or?
yeah, he would just go along board to board to board and
Oh no, I never got to see that.
clobber
No.
everybody. Yeah, yeah.
No, never did that. Yeah, I just remember. I don't like being in the back room. He was also really into Go. Did you ever? Was that a thing back then?
You know, I bought the game because of
Hmm.
him, but I've never played it.
He tried to teach me, and I tried to figure it out, but it was like I couldn't quite get a grasp of it, or yeah, I still don't really know how it works. So
I
I
don't know.
tried because
I, I got as far as buying it, and that was it. I still have it somewhere.
right
And it's still in the same box. It's never been removed.
there,
That's how some
this
things go.
it's quarantine. This is the perfect time to go home,
That's
like
right.
learn a new game, like figure that out this weekend. But yeah.
Right.
One
Yeah.
other one was like I forget what book it was, but this was the other thing is that he recommend. I was saying before he recommended a lot of movies, music, and books and stuff, authors, and again tailored it to each student. Like
Right.
whatever he knew what you were into. He's like, and not that everyone was a knocking out of the park, but he just gave you non-traditional recommendations for things. So he's like, okay, everybody, like Invincible Kung Fu Legs, Clam Bake, Elvis Presley, go watch that. With music, he obviously knew we were into punk rock or getting into punk rock. He was the first guy that mentioned the New York Dolls to me. Oh yeah, check out the New York Dolls, check out this. He told us about this band, the Electric Guitars, that he saw open for Peter Gabriel at some point. He's like, they didn't have a drum set, they had a big dumpster and they just wailed on it with crowbars or something. And oh my god, I still like just he just knew that certain okay, you're the kid who's going to be into this, like let me and he had credibility because he had actually been open-minded enough and explored the world enough to sort of have bits and pieces of things that he knew he could recommend to people. So and different, I remember him recommending like Leroy Jones, like the playwright. He's like, oh, he came up with this idea of radical theater where he would bring an all-white audience in and just have them murdered. Like oh, that's amazing. And I would go and look up Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka, and stuff that a high school kid, you didn't like have that exposure. No other English teacher was going to recommend
Right.
this stuff to you. It's funny because now I don't like, it's not like I'm very super well, I can't claim that I'm very well versed in Black history and Black literature, but it is interesting that now we're in this weird, well, not in an interesting cultural moment where people are talking more about Black artists and Black writers, and people are saying hey, you got to open your mind, you got to read outside of what you got in high school. You should read authors like Amiri Baraka. And I'm like, I did thanks to Thom Williams. I can like I actually was open-minded enough, was like led down that path. But of course, it's a criminal that it just took the one radical teacher to kind of like individually recommend that one thing. But
Yeah, but
it
that's
is,
how change happens.
it is, but it is just interesting to that, like that's how ahead of his time I guess he was, and that he was, he saw this, years and years ago, decades ago. I forget who the author was, but he imprinted on me forever the importance of an opening line with and I'm gonna bungle the line, but it was something like he opened a book and he was like today is Tuesday, mother died today. I forget the exact phrasing, but he's like, but the way he read it, and I'm like, wow, that is a fucking good opening line. And so again, in my writing career, going in through life, like I remember Thom Williams like stressing that importance and reading that example and being like, okay, that's it's crucial to any
Yeah.
book, chapter, whatever you're gonna do. Like again, like just with one little moment where he opens a book and reads something, it's like imprinted on me forever in a way that again most teachers didn't have that impact. So yeah, he was an incredible dude. I like, so in keeping in touch with him, I again, most of it was over email and such. I think I only went to his house once, And I think that was when we were working on the Elvis Oedipus. And I never got to meet his wife, where it was this interesting moment where obviously we knew he was married and we knew she existed. But she was sort of like this mythic character. Like, it was weird. We knew him for years and had never met his wife, and it was like it was odd. And so he at some point we maybe mentioned that like, you know, oh, it's so interesting. We've known you for all this time. We just never met your wife. We've heard about her or whatever. And he's like, well, she's in the other room. I could, you know, you could meet her right now. And we were like, no, like, I think we kind of like that she's like Schrodinger's wife. Like, she exists and doesn't exist in the exact same moment. So I think we just kind of, we opted not to. So I've never met her to this day, which is, again, now I feel like it's kind of a shame, because I would love to, you know, share memories and tell her all about, you know,
I can put you in touch with her. I'm in touch with her.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. We've talked quite a few times, and she listens to the podcast, and she's.
Yeah, I hope she'll hear this and you know, and hear how fondly, you know, obviously he's remembered by so many people. I was in touch with him a little bit, and I just never knew. I don't think I ever knew he was sick, or at least I never knew it was serious.
Apparently, it was really fast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, like, part of me was kind of like, dude, like, why didn't you tell me? But I guess, you know, it's not your duty to come and tell me. It's my duty to keep in touch.
I felt the same way. And no, I hadn't been in touch the way that you or some other people had been. I mean, we emailed a little bit in the mid-90s. And then before that, I was in touch with him before there was even email. You know, it was just telephone, and that was it. So, but yeah, I felt like when I heard he died, it was the same sort of thing. It was like Jim Esch actually called me and said, you know, I just wanted you to know. Or maybe emailed me, I don't remember, but it was a real shock.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, he just went downhill really fast. And
it's so criminal. It's this great, you know, it's the yet again, without even trying, like, teaching us all a lesson about like, you know, be in touch with people. Don't take for granted that they're just going to be there. You know, moving out to California, I can only make it back to Philadelphia so many times, you know, so often to see family. And it was just always this thing of like, well, all right, I'm in town. I could go see Thom, but I got to get in the car, drive across town. It's like, yeah, I'll catch him next time. You know, I'll send him an email, whatever, set it all up. And, you know, had other friends, other people that I had to make time for. So, oh, you know, next time. And then, you know, next thing you know, there isn't a next time. So make the time, like take the, you know, learn that lesson through him as well. Yeah. But yeah, it stings a lot to not be able to, you know, again, give him like, it's only years later that you realize, like, you know, you have something in your life that you want to thank him for guiding you in that direction. Sure. And unfortunately you can't. So the only way I can do it is sort of by continuing to push forward creatively, try to, you know, so there, you know, as much as I try to do things for myself, for my family, whatever, part of me is always like, make Thom proud, like, you know, do something that he would have enjoyed.
We're all living our own lives, you know, and,
right.
And these are points that are similar, and I think it's good to recognize them.
Right. I'm remembering. This is like, again, it's funny how these things come to you. Like, you know, I wouldn't think about it. I hadn't thought about this one. There was the Fringe newspaper, the poetry newspaper, right? Like, I don't know if you had this. Like, it was Mar News was the school newspaper, and then within that there was Fringe, which was a like poetry and drawings and stuff like that. And I'm just remembering now, there was an issue of Fringe. Everybody could submit poems, and for some reason nobody had submitted, or only one or two people had submitted for this one that month's or that week's issue or whatever. And so I just sat in the back room with Thom and a couple of my friends, and we just made up poems that were completely ridiculous, but also then attributed them to different kids that didn't exist, like different authors that didn't exist. And then, like, my other friend was drawing ridiculous drawings and whatever. And yeah, none of it made sense. And we were, of course, we had to push the envelope on everything. So some of it was like more offensive or ridiculous, and Thom had to come in and rein us in and be like, no, like, change the last line or change this and do this. And I'm like, no, leave it. It's great. Like, no. And so, like, I still have a copy of that somewhere, but like, just there was that time where, like, it was just me and Thom and one or two other people just created the entire issue of one thing with just like off the cuff poems that made no sense and went nowhere and was attributed to all these ghost authors that didn't exist.
I did the exact same thing when I was in college. I participated in a poetry magazine, and for some reason, I had a bunch of poems that I wanted to put them in the magazine, and I went to the publisher and they were like, well, we're not doing it now. And so I did the whole thing myself and went around to my friends and said, give me a poem, or, right when we made up a bunch of stuff and we published it. And in my senior year, I got an award for it.
Nice.
I didn't even go to the awards ceremony. They said you should go, and I was like, I don't want to go.
I envy Thom for not having to live through the past couple years of our lives.
What do you think he would say?
I mean, what would you give to like get his take on all this, like to watch this all go down? I mean, I'm sure he would just say, he's like, we're officially a country full of yum-yums, apparently, like if that's where we're at now. But yeah, I think about that, like, what wouldn't I give to hear Thom's commentary on our current political times and the current apocalypse? And then at the same time, I'm like, oh, you lucky bastard, you didn't have to live through all this. Like, you got to relax and rest in peace on this one. So yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We'd like to thank Jeff for sharing so many of his experiences with Thom and the ways in which they resonated into his future. An accomplished musician and author, it was inspiring for us to see how focused this interview was about Thom. It could have very easily been mostly about Jeff. We hope that you agree that this interview was rich with experiences and insights about Thom, but more about how to be a human being. It took a long time to edit, and still, nearly 45 minutes of material wasn't included in this podcast. Thanks to those of you who continue to reach out. Thom's legacy was clearly quite wide and very deep. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Pagula Rasa is produced by Dave Blank and Jamesh. The music in this podcast includes Farm Rot and Mega Duodeum by the Skull Farmers, and original compositions by Dave. You can find Pagula Rasa on padularasa.com, at anchor.fm, or your favorite podcasting application. If you'd like to send us feedback, please send an email to padularasa@gmail.com. We hope that you will become a subscriber of Pagula Rasa and tune in again very soon. So long, and thank you for listening.